That's some good coffee, everybody. All right, welcome back. So today's episode is brought to you by NordVPN. Without NordVPN, researching today's episode would have me on a government watch list. NordVPN allows you to change your IP address, making you harder to track and securing your privacy. Use promo code GIL20 to get 20% off the first 2 months. So we got a doozy of an episode today, guys. For most people old enough to have lived through it, the thought of terrorism is usually accompanied by images of September 11, 2001 attacks at the World Trade Center and Pentagon. Grainy images of clerics with old Soviet armaments and caves who masterminded the most devastating attack on the U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor were shown all the time on 24-hour news networks, with experts and talking heads describing propaganda videos of religious extremists committing unspeakable atrocities as the primary recruiting arm for terror. In the 20 years to follow, and protracted insurgencies that have been fought around the globe, the lone terrorist in a remote Afghan cave has been replaced by networks of propaganda and troll accounts on Facebook and Twitter. Brutal videos of beheadings on LiveLeak have been swapped for memes and discussions on Telegram and Reddit. Social media sites have become dangerous outlets that provide platforms for radicalization and extremism, and they need to be better moderated. So, the effects of radical extremism are evident in the news. According to the Anti-Defamation League, 2016 was the second most deadly year on record for domestic terrorists, with the attack on Pulse nightclub in Orlando claiming the lives of 49 innocent people in an incident carried out by a radicalized young man. One of the shooters who killed 14 people in San Bernardino, California, professed her loyalty to the Islamic State before the tragedy. He had a Coast Guard lieutenant who was just arrested in 2019 after his work computer was flagged for suspicious activity. After investigation, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison for conspiring to carry out attacks on U.S. public officials, after being inspired by a white supremacist Norwegian terrorist. So it's a fact, okay? We live in an increasingly polarized society. The emergence of online echo chambers has been a really concerning factor, especially in these last few years. Echo chambers are online spaces where opposing viewpoints are shunned or actively moderated and deleted. Social scientists who study interactions and their relationship to democracy cite that exposure to a diverse range of viewpoints is crucial for developing well-informed citizens who are also tolerant of ideas of others. By contrast, exposure to only like-minded voices may contribute towards polarization towards ideological extremes. So as extreme viewpoints emerge, people who have been exposed to radical political ideologies tend to isolate themselves from outside viewpoints. In his research at the University of Oxford, Jonathan Bright observes that far-left and far-right echo chambers are as sheltered from the extreme opposite political views as they are from the centrist views in their own political camps. The further a social media user moves towards extremist echo chambers, the more they will be receptive to radical extremist ideologies. Without opposing viewpoints, the conclusion that everyone believes these radical ideas that are ubiquitous to their in-group is more readily assumed. So Islamic terror groups have evolved with the times, shifting their recruiting strategies to take advantage of emerging social media technologies. When coalition forces entered Afghanistan in the early 2000s, they fought against Al-Qaeda. The organization that claimed responsibility for the attacks on 9/11 grew from person-to-person contact by radical clerics in mosques throughout Arab states. ISIS, on the other hand, relied on social media to recruit its members, with alarming success. More than 6,900 Westerners have traveled to Syria to fight for foreign terrorist organizations, at least 150 of whom are from the United States. By February 2017, federal prosecutors charged 109 Americans for activities in connection with the Islamic State. ISIS successfully used social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, as well as encrypted peer-to-peer apps such as WhatsApp and Kik, to recruit and radicalize new members to carry out violence in the name of the caliphate. In contrast with radical Islamists, right-wing extremists also utilize social media to share propaganda to like-minded individuals. However, social media is rarely the tool used for radicalization. Instead, right-wing extremists tend to use social media to share conspiracy theories and white supremacist memes in an attempt to solidify the radicalization of their ilk. Coded messages are common in online communications of white supremacists. Seemingly innocuous combinations of numbers are often used as a sign of solidarity between racial extremists and social media. So the Anti-Defamation League really goes into depth with this. Go ahead and pull that up, Jamie. So they explain 1488 is a combination of two popular white supremacist numeric symbols. The first symbol is 14, which is shorthand for the 14-word slogan. I'm not going to read that because it's going to get me demonetized and probably kicked off of YouTube. But if you really want to know more about it, you can hop on the Anti-Defamation League. I've got the links posted below. Check it out for yourself. just make sure you use your NordVPN first, because you probably want to fly on commercial airliners at some point in your life. So the second one is 88, which, again, is going to kick me out, get me kicked off of YouTube if I say it. But the eighth letter of the alphabet is H. You could probably deduce what that means. But together, the numbers form a general endorsement of white supremacy and its beliefs. So as such, they're ubiquitous within the white supremacist movement, as graffiti, in graphics, tattoos, even in screen names and email addresses. Another example of coded hate speech common in right-wing extremist internet communique are the numbers 1352, representing the percentage of Black Americans in the United States and the percentage of violent crime reportedly committed by the demographic. The Anti-Defamation League keeps a pretty exhaustive database containing coded white supremacist messages along with their definitions. And of course, as the current hateful messaging is tracked, new codes and radical messaging is created. So far-right radicals have successfully utilized social media to organize and carry out extremist attacks in their pursuit of white supremacist ideals and anti-government conspiracies. The neo-Nazi group who organized the now infamous Unite the Right rally took to Facebook and Gab to organize. And after a night and day of anti-Semitic speech and violent clashes with counter-protesters, it left one dead and several injured in their wake. The January 6, 2021 march on the U.S. Capitol, which attempted to overturn the 2020 election and left one protester and one police officer dead, was organized over Facebook and Parler. So, moving away from the right-wingers, okay, so while they're generally less violent, you got experts concerned with the rise in violent rhetoric by the far-left extremist groups. So, like the right-wing groups, radical leftists have utilized social media to organize protests and counter-protests, with individuals identifying with Antifa or anarchist groups, singling out targets and organizing protests. So lately, however, you see a lot more dehumanizing language in the radical leftist echo chambers, and it's beginning to resemble that used by white supremacists and anti-government right-wing extremists, with the levels of violence are beginning to match the intensity of their counterparts. So there's a palpable fear by law enforcement agencies that radical leftist groups, such as the Socialist Rifle Association, will exhibit violent tendencies on a more frequent basis. During one late August 2020 protest, a self-proclaimed Antifa protester ambushed a Trump supporter counter-protester in the streets of Portland, killing the latter. While the violence pales in comparison to Islamic terrorists and far-right extremists, law enforcement agencies are worried that radical leftists might soon trade their fireworks and bike logs for firearms and explosives. So the challenge of combating hate and extremist rhetoric treads a fine line. The First Amendment prohibits Congress from making laws regarding speech or assembly, yet U.S. law already penalizes threats and calls to violence. However, social media companies like Facebook and Twitter are private organizations, and thus are not beholden to protecting free speech on their platforms. So while steps were taken following the attempted insurrection on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, tech giants coming together to shut down Parler, the right-wing Twitter app, may have done more harm than good, as extremists are emboldened by the censorship, citing overreach of government and big tech. The anti-government conspiracy theorists are given ammunition by attempts to remove their groups. Those in their echo chambers see predictions coming true. So how do we fix this? I mean, the proverbial toothpaste is already the tube. The genie's out of the bottle when it comes to extremists and social media. Instead of censorship and scattering extremists to far corners of the internet to solidify the walls of their echo chambers, tech companies have a responsibility to shed light on the hateful rhetoric espoused by radical extremists. By removing the hurdles and barricades and exposing everyone to a diversity of ideas, hateful rhetoric would not be able to hold up. I mean, really, folks, sunlight's the best disinfectant. If you want to end the hate and the violence, shed some light on it. Let people see just how ridiculous these ideas are. When bigoted people are exposed to ideological differences, instead of a dehumanizing view of some faceless enemy, they will see they have more in common than difference, and more rational people will break their radicalized conditioning. Compared with an ideal future of a more free and open social media, today's social media model is a cancer to society that leads to violent hate and rhetoric on all sides. And it will take a concerted effort by all tech companies responsible for providing platforms and echo chambers to extremists and violent radicals to repair the damage they've done. All right, folks, well, that's all I got for you today. Make sure you hit like this video, hit the subscribe button, and also click that notification bell, because subscriptions don't really mean much on YouTube anymore. Thanks for watching.